Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amanda Hunt, Director of Education and Curator of Programs here at MoCA. Hi, Keith. Jordan Casteel needs a little introduction for this crowd. I'm so happy you're here. Jordan and I go back to the Studio Museum in Harlem, where she was an artist in residence 2015 and 16, and I was working as a curator, and fell in love then. Fell in love with Jordan and her drive and her body of work, much of it centered around black male subjectivity, painting black men as purple, as green, as other kinds of expressions to show the range of experience, potential, all of it. And when we were living in Harlem together, working towards the exhibition, the Studio Museum programs culminates in a big exhibition. It's like the debut of the year, and Jordan was telling me that she was thinking of painting our neighbors in Harlem, the street vendors who we walk by on 135th and Lenox, Adam Clayton Powell and 122nd. What did I think about that? I thought it was profound. I still do. And she keeps going and amazing me. So I'm just so happy you're here. It's very emotional. It's MLK Junior Day tomorrow. I find your work has, whether subtly or not, an activist bent and heart to it. You come from a family of civil rights activists, and so this is not lost on me today, so it feels really special to have you here, also on this super full moon. Are you all feeling this? I just want to say a few words about Jordan's career and practice before we go into the galleries. We'll start kind of more embedded into the exhibition, one day at a time, Manny Farber and Termite art. It's a show, for those of you who haven't seen it, a lot about the quotidian, about the everyday, about the joys and beauty and small tragedies sometimes caught in our life as humans, kind of just trying to navigate our worlds. So without further ado, born and raised in Denver, Jordan Casteel currently lives and works in New York. She received her BA from Agnes Scott College in Georgia and her MFA from Yale School of Art. She's had one-person exhibitions at Sergeant's Daughters in New York, Casey Kaplan, where she is represented in New York, and the Harvey B. Gantt Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. She's also exhibited at the Crystal Bridges Museum of Art, Mass MoCA, here at MoCA Los Angeles, Boston University Art Galleries, the Studio Museum in Harlem, the University of Denver School of Art, and Kenyon College in Ohio. Jordan will be opening a major solo exhibition back in her hometown in Denver in a few weeks at the Denver Museum of Art. We are thrilled for her. Go see it if you're in town, or just check the internet for information about it. And I think without further ado, please join me in giving Jordan a warm welcome.
So, hi. It truly is kind of amazing to stand here right now and look at the faces, because it is like I'm talking to family. And those of you that I'm maybe seeing you for the first time, thank you for being here and spending your time with me on a Sunday when you could be doing other things. But I have no words for what Amanda just said, because I probably could get emotional myself. But it's a really exciting time for me. It's an exciting time because I get to bear witness to a lot of my peers doing phenomenal things. I feel a part of something, as you are part of this with me right now in this moment. And Amanda has been a grounding force from what felt like the beginning. My time at Studio Museum was instrumental, and the paintings that we'll get to see in here of mine specifically tied to Harlem are super important, because I found home in Harlem. I was in New York. I was feeling lost, as many people who are transplanted there do. I was like, what is this place? I'm exhausted. And then I found Studio Museum, and they said, we got you. And a lot of that had to do with Amanda. And I knew that my painting practice was going to be a way to reflect that out to other people. So without further ado, what we're going to do in a formal sense, just so you know as you're following me around, is we're going to start in one gallery. I'm going to talk about some of the things that are happening in that gallery that are exciting to me and that I want you to pay attention to. And then we'll move through another gallery. I'm going to point out one of my works, but we're not going to stay in there because it's a small gallery and we don't want anything to like break or anybody to be claustrophobic. And then we'll go to another painting of mine and we'll talk about it and stand in front of it for a minute. So follow me. Thank you. So this is the room that I wanted to start in for a few reasons. In the spirit of transparency, this is the first time I've seen this show myself in the flesh, and it was as of like 20 minutes ago. So keeping that in mind, what you're getting here are some of my first impressions, really, the things that I noticed and felt as I was moving through the gallery spaces. There were a lot of things that resonated with me, so knowing that we only have a short period of time, it was hard to think of. I just realized, where is that? Oh, it's up there. Can you hear me okay, even though that's happening? Even though we have a short period of time, I was trying to think of what would be a good place to start to capture all the things that I'm thinking about and that are exciting to me as a painter and as a thinker and an engager with the world right now. This exhibition as a whole, the sense that I got was excitement because it meant that what I'm doing in my practice, has been happening for a long time. There are many people who are thinking about the same things, but that painting is still alive and well, and I love that. And the way that I paint, sometimes I think we all get insecure and maybe second guess ourselves, and there are times that I'm in the studio and I'm like, what am I doing and why? And then I see other people doing it and I feel affirmed, and then I learn from them and I get to bring those things back to the studio. So this was a gallery where I felt some of that immediately. This Lorna Simpson, I thought was really phenomenal because what it's doing in like really short tidbits is capturing the day in the life of this woman. And in my experience of it, I just felt that it was me. Like I felt that I was seeing myself reflected in some aspect of whoever this woman was. I don't know much about the story. Yes, I read the little thing on the side. It doesn't tell you who this person is per se. But what I related to were these moments of like, yep, that was me 24 hours ago getting on a subway, you know, like the mundaneness of our commute, of our moving through life, and then we forget how quickly those moments fleet through our visual memory, also at a time when social media is a thing. It's kind of crazy to look at this in these little screens because it made me think of the way that we see images now and how they're kind of compacted in squares. We observe them quickly, we observe them in fractions, and how we choose those fractions to be interested in caught my attention. Anyway, so I thought this was really interesting. Eliza Nussbaum, I got really excited when I saw this work. Because I know her personally and have been an admirer of her work for some time. She also works out of New York. She lives in New York, right? These days, I don't know where anybody's at, like everybody's everywhere. The beauty of planes is we all move around. But what resonates with me in her work is that she's doing a lot of things that I connect to in my own practice and the way that I fluidly move around a painting. The differences between our practices is that she uses live models for the beginning portions of her painting. So she oftentimes will have somebody sitting for her when she's doing the face, then she'll take it back to the studio and she'll work on it more and finish it. And I feel like that relationship she's having with her sitters is sort of similar to the one that I have in my practice, and that I only have so much time with a person, and that time becomes precious. I use personally photography as a tool to capture that instant. She's accessing them in person. How that changes her experience, I don't know. I'd love to talk to her about it one day. But what it means too is that she'll do these gestures through her legs with this really thin paint stroke, and it's juxtaposed next to these thicker, kind of more compacted fields of color, right, that I think are really interesting. And then she's using these patterns in really interesting, I'm using the word interesting a lot as I'm talking, but in really fascinating ways, I think. In the interlude, Amanda and I were actually having an interesting conversation that I want to share with you guys. She reminded me of the fact that I'm an educator, which might be some of the ways might influence the way that I'm communicating with you guys. I teach at Rutgers University, and we were talking about how it's so important that communicating artwork and ideas becomes accessible and what it means to be accessible when talking about art. So if you hear me using the word weird to talk about art, that's cool because I think it's a wonderful way to approach art. It's just as wonderful if you use the word ephemera to describe art, but I might use weird. So, you know, just so you guys have some sense of who I am as a being, that I'm just gonna be as real with you as possible, and hopefully if you have questions, also don't be afraid to ask them because nothing's stupid. Educator Jordan, moving on. So we're gonna actually move out of this gallery, and I want you, the space that we're going to move through, as I described in the beginning, we're going to do kind of quickly, but I want you to be aware of a few things about this gallery. I think it is a stunning space that has been designed with an arrangement of flowers that gets, I just found out, I can't remember the artist's name though. Maurice Harris. So he has this beautiful arrangement of flowers that he comes in every week, is my understanding, and redoes the arrangement. There's a couch. It's a small space. Because it's a small space, I invite you to walk through and look at my painting as well, which will be the first of mine that you will see. It's called Memorial. It is and was one of the first paintings that I did that did not explicitly include a figure, although I think it is still reminiscent and reflective of a human body or memory of a human body or figurative space and being. So observe it in that way. While you observe it, I would love for you to be thinking about some of the things I said about Elisa Nussbaum's work and my relationship to it and my excitement about it, and see if you see any similarities between hers and the things I observed and what it is that I was observing myself in that painting over there. So we'll kind of cut through. I'm not going to stop and talk. I'll give you a minute to look around in there, and then we'll keep going to kind of back towards the front of the gallery, and you'll follow me there. All right? So follow Amanda's waving hand. So hopefully you didn't feel too rushed in the gallery that we were supposed to rush through. But I would love to kind of, I know maybe we're not supposed to, can I engage? Okay. Because I would love to hear some of the things that maybe you guys noticed about that painting in relationship to Elisa Nussbaum. Were there any connections that you guys noticed or felt? Relationships you made? No? Okay, if you don't know, then I can keep talking. No? Okay, so one of the things that I know, flowers, like I'll just break it down, like the basics, that's feasible, right? So the use of the flowers in the painting in the other room, the first thing I noticed was the plant. So thinking about foliage and space and how we bring the outside inside, and then what does it mean to take the thing that was inside and put it outside, thinking about the memorial floral arrangement. My guess is that was something that occupied an internal or like a domestic, well, probably not a domestic space, but indoor space. So thinking about the relationships between the push and pull between what's outside and what's inside, what's intimacy, what's personal, what are the things that we confine within our intimate spaces, and then the things that we put out. Thinking about the New York Times laying on there, how that projects on what's happening outside of that room and that space in the Elisa Nussbaum painting. But then there's a woman laying on the floor. These are all things that I'm like, again, I just saw the show too, so that's why I'm saying nothing you're noticing is gonna be a stupid answer, because these are some of the immediate things that I was connecting to when I was looking through the galleries and the work, is that there's a lot of these push and pull relationships happening in all the galleries between what is intimacy, what are the things that we claim as precious? And sometimes the things that are most precious to us are the things that we might consider throwaways or somebody else might consider a throwaway. So the memorial piece, what's interesting and kind of true in my experience of that, like I said, that was the first painting that didn't have an explicit representation of a body, but it was so representative of a body, and it was by a trash can. And I remember the moment that I saw it. I was leaving the Studio Museum, and I lived within 7 blocks of the museum, right? Like when I got the residency, I was like, if you get this residency, you go. Like you're gonna be in the hood, you're gonna be in Harlem. You're to be of and in Harlem. And that was really important to me, to be experiential in that way, knowing that this was an opportunity of a lifetime. It was like, how do I maximize this experience in this time? And what happened was I became a displaced observer of my environment. I was acutely aware in my new environment of all the things and the relationships and the people that were engaging there. Maybe it's because I'm from Colorado and New York is so different than that, that I have always felt very aware of all the things that are happening around me, or noticing of, I don't know, like the discarded thing on the floor. And that was a moment where I turned around and I saw this like memorial arrangement of flowers, just like casually chilling by an outside trash can. And I was like, that's weird. That was like truly, like I was like, that's weird. Took a picture on my phone, put it in my pocket, didn't look at that picture again for like 2 months. Like I was just sitting on it. It was a thing that caught my eye that I didn't really reflect a whole lot on until I decided, there was a moment where I decided, you know, this needs to be a painting. Why I decided that in the moment is completely unknown to me. It's kind of like, why do we pick up, I don't know, a pen and decide to make a note in the morning when we do? I don't know. There are things that just happen and they're innately within us. And painting, the practice of painting is one of those things for me. It's just like walking. I don't know why things happen when they do. But there are moments where I just have to follow that instinct. And it was an instinct that I felt that I had to follow. Made that painting. I looked at that painting, was like, weird. It's as weird of a painting as it is to me and when I experience that moment, because I'm not sure where it fits in my practice. How does this fit in the work that I've been making that deals with the figure and intimacy? And then I realized it actually fit perfectly with the rest of my practice. It was actually Thelma Golden at the Studio Museum during a studio visit that she said that I was a landscape painter during the studio visit that I had with her. Do you remember that? I remember being so twisted in my head after she said that. I was like, what is she talking about? You know, like I in no way relate to that conceptually. Like, how am I a landscape painter? I hate painting landscape. I did plein air painting once and like fell asleep every time I was outside in the grass. You know, like it wasn't my thing. But she was onto something, and of course she was. Like also, like it's Thelma Golden, like of course she was. Because it stayed in my brain. I think what she was accessing is that I am an observer. Landscape painting is about being a part of the world and observing the world and then translating it into canvas and painting whatever it was. And that is in essence what I do, and that this memorial painting was a part of the greater landscape that I had been painting for a long time. And now, what's crazy is probably in the past 6 months, I have been like, yeah, I'm a landscape painter. And people are like, I'm not going to write that down yet. You know, like, I'm like, yeah, write that in your article. Jordan Casteel, landscape painter. Nobody's into it yet. If anybody in this room wants to take it, do it. I would love that. But I think what's amazing about it is that it gives an expansiveness to my practice that is probably true, more inherently true to who I am than just being a portraitist or somebody who only paints black men. I am about observing space. And observing space and my relationships to my environment is really just a tool to paint. I love painting. Like, I am a painter's painter. In grad school, when all my friends were like, I'm gonna try out video, I was like, you do that, you know? Like, I'm gonna stick to oil on canvas, you know? Like, I'm gonna keep figuring out this composition, I guess. Because the thing that drove me the most was trying to answer the questions that exist within painting for me. It's about the relationships between brushstroke and texture and color that get me excited about painting. And I really want the paintings to reflect that. And the landscape is just a tool that I get to access for me to experience painting. And hopefully for other people to experience a painting, that they get to see this person, see themselves potentially reflected in the people or the places that I paint, feel a kinship with whatever it is that's represented, but then also get excited about the kind of chunky and then the thin and the relationship. So I think this is a perfect painting, having talked about Eliza Nussbaum's, where I mentioned her pants and the brushiness and the kind of thin opacity, thinness of her paint. And then there's this moment in the bottom where I'm doing this with the shadow, and I was like, whoa, like we both do that, you know? I didn't realize that until I was looking at Eliza's work, that we both have these moments within our work where you can see, as makers, our hands and our minds kind of working in conjunction through time, if that makes sense. I.e., sometimes we decide to go fast, and sometimes we decide to really slow down and dictate, like, I probably spent 2 to 3 times the amount of time on that like little corner than I clearly did right here. But is that more or less important than this? No. I personally, for me, it's not. My experience of it isn't. As a final piece, it's not. So I'm gonna talk a little about this painting and what we're looking at now. I just kind of like to give you a full thinking of what it is that how I moved through this space. Michael, Glassman Mike, that's who this guy is. It's really important that you also know that these are like real people. They're people who are living. I think it's a really important part of my portrait practice is that these are people with stories living today that I have had the opportunity to build relationships with through this practice. So it's hard for me not, for Sari Dure, for example, to call out, like, I have people in this room who I met through painting because I got an opportunity to paint Dre over there, and now we're like really good friends, and it's this thing. And I have a similar thing where I got to meet Michael, and now he called me just the other day to say like Happy New Year. Because I moved just a little further uptown, now I don't see him every day. So like he's like, where are you? Like what's like, have you died? Like what's going on? And I'm like, I'm sorry, Michael, I just get off at a different stop now. So Glassman Mike, I completed this painting while I was a resident at the Studio Museum in Harlem. And when Amanda first kind of walked me into the space, the first thing I said to her was like, what's it like to like live with this painting again? Because I haven't seen it since I was a resident at the Studio Museum. She was a part of the like real conception of this work. As she said in the introduction, I showed up and was like, I think I want to paint our neighbors. I had this experience where I had been painting interiors. I had been approaching people and asking to go into their homes to photograph them and making the paintings within their homes. And I got to Studio Museum, and the street, it was the outside-inside thing that I was talking about earlier, really resonated with me in Harlem. It was clear that people created home for themselves on the street in Harlem. The spaces that they occupied on the street very much functioned as if it were their home. They were very intentional about the things they were surrounding themselves by, the objects they were selling were oftentimes really curated. And Michael, Glassman Mike, was the king of that. Now, granted, his name was Glassman Mike because he often sold glass, if you can I could pick up on that. But it wasn't always glass, because there would be days I would walk by his table and it was curated just with frogs. Like he like had found all the things that had frogs in them and like curated his table to just have frog pieces on them. There were other days I would go by and he would like just have like wicker baskets. Like there were very specific things for different times, but he had gotten started by selling glass. That's his nickname, Glassman Mike, and everybody in the neighborhood knew him as such. So Glassman Mike, literally, I walked past him for 2 months without saying anything. I was new to Harlem. I was like figuring out where I was. I was doing the New York thing where I put in my headphones and like prayed no one touch me, you know? Like I'm like, don't touch me, don't look at me, don't touch me, don't look at me. Because it's all about creating inner safety when you're in a place so populated such as New York. And finally, as I made this decision to do this project of painting people on the street, I was like, Jordan, challenge, accept it. You have to go out there and introduce yourself to people. You have to do the thing you don't really like doing, which is coming outside of yourself and saying hello. Like genuinely like saying hello. And that challenge was hard. Like I can't even front. As easy as I seem right now with you, it would be like, oh yeah, of course she did that. She seems extroverted enough. In reality, I consider myself an introvert, and I'm just really practiced at this, okay? And the practice probably started when I was doing this portrait process, is that I had to go up to people and say, hey, my name is Jordan. And even though I'd been making eye contact, we clearly were neighbors, in essence, I hadn't done the due diligence of introducing myself to my neighbor, which is crazy how many of us do that on the day-to-day basis, that we don't take the time to say hello to the people that occupy our everyday spaces. So I said hi to Michael, and immediately we like totally hit it off. He told me about how he used to work at Vice. He's wearing this Vice ring. He like was popping up, you know, like showing off his Vice ring. I was like, that's dope. Like I'm a painter. I'm at the Studio Museum. They have this residency. He's like, I've heard of that place. I'm like, it's literally 2 blocks away. And it's free. Do you know that David Hammond's flag? And he's like, huh? And I'm like, that red, black, and green flag? And he's like, yeah, I bet. Like, I know that. And I'm like, well, there's art in there. And I really want to like make you a piece of art and put you in the museum. And I want you to be a part of this space that has become so important to me. And he was like, yeah, cool, whatever you need. Which is crazy. Within 5 minutes of exchange, he's like, yeah, cool, what do you need? Like, where do you want me, right? Like, he's just like, where do you want me? So I'm like, I want you as you, so you tell me where you want to be, and I'll figure it out. And he set himself up in this kind of posture. It was important to me after having had that 2-second exchange where he told me the story of having worked at Vice that I knew that that ring was going to be important. So I was like, can you put your hand on your knee? I think that was the only thing I really kind of asked of him, was that the ring would be showing. And then the image came back to the studio, and what's beautiful is that when I come back to the studio and I have this image and I had that 5-second exchange, I don't know how many of you have had moments where you're talking to someone and then you walk away and you're like, what did I just talk about? You know, like you kind of forget that you just had this moment that was supposed to maybe be intimate, but you weren't really present. is that photography allows me a way, and my practice allows me a way to really become present sometimes after the fact, that I get to study that moment when I go into the studio and observe all the things that were happening that I might not have noticed initially. So this was a sort of rare painting in that I put something in the space that wasn't there at all. Well, it was around the block, okay? So on my block was this sign, the Harlem Not For Sale, Fight Back. That was right outside my apartment, and I was seeing that every day, and I knew I wanted to include that in a painting as a part of this exhibition. And it felt perfect for this painting because behind him there was a lot of graffiti. There was a space that had just been closed down, and now it's become like a fancy, I think it's a Mexican restaurant. It's not that good though, but anyway, beside the fact. But what's crazy is it sort of displaced Michael, right? Like this new, through gentrification, like he had his space in front of this building that was closed down for many years, and then a new thing that's happening popped in, and now he's like, he's still sort of in the area, but I don't see him there nearly as much. Granted, I did move a little further away, so he could be there more than I know, actually. But all those signs and that became very important, that there was, you can see the inkling of the for sale sign that was on the board. Yeah, he's just pretty amazing. And this becomes a document of that relationship. So I don't know what time's like. We're getting closer. Yeah. Were you starting to say something? Yeah. Tell me about it. Oh. So, okay, I'll tell you a little bit about the opening, because this was really important, I guess, for this moment and this time and what it really signified for me at Studio Museum. Like I said to Michael, Studio Museum. He was like, cool, I've heard of it, but never been there. This is somebody who'd been living in Harlem most of his life, but had never set foot in front of an institution that was supposed to be specifically kind of designed for communities of color to have access to art, and yet he didn't necessarily feel that it was accessible. And I found that really profound and continually true for all the people that I painted during that time and the people that I approached, which was kind of confronting because it became clear that the importance of getting them inside the space as a painting was just as important as getting them inside the space as people and beings and feeling that that space was theirs, physically and in real life as well. So the paintings gave them a tool and that accessibility. The opening comes. I mean, I tell the story of James all the time, and sorry, Amanda, you've heard it, but I think it's like the perfect example of the power of this project. James isn't, obviously, this is Michael, but James was the first painting that I did in this body of work. And when I approached James, it was a similar experience with Michael. I go up to James after I'd finished the painting, and I'm like, James, you gotta come see the painting. Like, come. I finished it, give him the card. I'm like, we're having open studios. Please come, see your painting. He's like, oh, okay, maybe Jordan, I don't know. Every day, like James, you gotta come. Finally, James, I think the day of open studios comes, and it's like this, it's packed. I'm kind of like crowded in the corner next to my paintings. People were asking me questions, and out of the corner of my eye, I see James walk in to the space. And I'm like, oh shit, like look, there's James is here, like this is so exciting. And somebody is like talking to him, and I go up and I'm like, James, you made it, like thank you, what do you think? And he's standing in front of this painting, and he says, God, it gets me every time. He's like, oh man, this is bigger than I thought. I thought it was gonna be a little drawing or something, like, I gotta go get my wife. And he like runs, so he runs, I'm like, oh man, like I don't know if he liked it, like I don't know what's happening, okay, cool, like sorry, like whatever. Continue with open studios, and then I see somebody come in who's dressed like to a T, dressed exactly like James, but it's a woman, and she's wearing a skirt version of what he was wearing. And it was like a suit, a white suit, wearing the same hat, yeah, the hat, everything. And I see her talking to somebody, and she's like clearly trying to figure out who the artist is. And somebody points me out, and I'm kind of like, hey. And she cuts through everybody, like kind of debows through everybody, throws her arms around me, and begins to cry and says, thank you for seeing the man that I love as I have always seen him, and sharing that with the world. It's stupid, it's ridiculous, because it is beautiful. And now I could play you about 20 voicemails on my phone right now that they leave me once a week just to say, baby girl, we love you. Anyway, so all of which is to say, right, there's that, oh, no, don't, it's not me, it's them. No, because I think it's a reflection on them and the power of saying hello, right? Like that introduction, I was walking by James. James sells CDs in front of Sylvia's. He's been doing it for 25 years. This man was like Michael, just like in his world, and beautifully so. And if I hadn't have taken the time to take out my headphones to say that I am going to share these people with others, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to build a relationship that has stayed with me now for years. That they are my Harlem parents. They know my parents have met them, my parents have thanked them. They came to the opening. All this started because we were talking about the opening. Because the opening was phenomenal. All these guys were invited. It was important to me that all of them were invited and all their people were invited, and they felt like kings and queens that they are, and they felt valued and welcomed in that space, and they sure did. I didn't even need to do anything. They paraded in there, and all of them, James and Yvonne in particular, showed up. Yvonne was wearing this beautiful red ball gown, and James, again matching, because I have since found out that she dresses him to match her every day. She is very clear about it. She's like, no, that's on purpose, honey. Like, I make sure that he is looking fresh to match me. Like, okay, I like the way you think. I need to work on that. Noted. So he's wearing a matching red suit. And they're just glowing, and all their family. And that opening was not mine, and it was never meant to be mine. It was theirs. And the course of that exhibition, they really occupied that space. They would come back with family and friends and their nieces and nephews and their grandchildren, and they would stand in front of the painting and say, that's me, I'm in a museum. And that my life is now going to be documented and memorialized and cared for, hopefully, within the institution for the rest of my life and beyond. And that's a real, as a person of color, I do think that is a really profound and important thing. And the glory that is mine is to be able to experience their joy here and now, that I get to be a living part of their journey through the world. So like Michael, I get to call Michael and be like, yo, Mike, like you're in LA right now. And he's like, what you talking about? I'm like, yo, painting, it's in a museum in LA. You got friends and family out there? You gotta send them out. You know what I mean? Like those are the conversations I get to now have with all my subjects and the people. And it is crazy, like I'm looking at Jure crying over here, but like real talk, Jure, like, it's another example of a relationship like James and Yvonne, where when I sent the email saying, hey, okay, this will be my last story. I'm in grad school, I decide I'm gonna paint naked black men, okay? I guess that's a foreign thought, crazy, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the law school, because I got some friends in the law school and they're gonna hook me up. They're like, no, we don't want any part of that, like, So then I was like, okay, yeah, bet, you're gonna be lawyers, like, okay, I get it. And then I go to, I was so naive, I don't know what I was thinking. Then I went to the business school because I had friends at the business school, and they were like, I keep going. And then somebody said, why don't you go to the school of drama? They get naked on stage all the time. And I was like, oh my God, you're right, brilliant. So I only knew one person in the school of drama, and it was a woman, and I reached out to her and was like, hey, like, can you put me in touch with some black men at the school of drama? Like, I would love to paint them. She was like, here's all their email addresses. You can just like email them yourself and decide. So I sent this like blind email, having not met any of these people, and Jure was the first and only to write back, and he's like, sign me up, right? By the way, Jure is a phenomenal playwright, and he's out here and writes for New Amsterdam, and anyway, he's amazing. Yes, okay, I know. Watch the most recent episode, he wrote the whole thing, I'm so proud of him. So anyway, Jure's like, yeah, sign me up. Granted, my name is Jordan, he thought I was a man, love you, but that's the truth. And so I'm sitting outside on the steps. Where we had decided to meet, and he walks past me, and I'm like, hey, like, are you Jure? And he's like, are you Jordan? I'm like, like, yeah, I'm the one doing this project. Anyway, so what's amazing about that is he said yes, right? Like, we made this painting, it was phenomenal. It was so good, and he was so hype on it that he became like my promotional tool, because then he went to all those people who didn't respond to my email and was like, y'all missing out. Like, y'all gotta be a part of this. So then I start getting all these emails from all the other actors and like playwrights and people at the School of Drama like, yeah, sign me up, sign me up. And I was like, oh, snap, like this is great. Next thing you know, I have a thesis show. It was the same with Studio Museum. These paintings, like Last Man Mike, so the painting of Charles, which I have been smart enough to keep my own work, which is important if there are any makers out there, like keep some of your own work. I decided to keep the painting of Charles from my time at Studio Museum. But Charles only came into my life because Michael, one day I'm walking by and he's like, yo, Jay, like you still painting people? And I was like, yeah, like it's an ongoing process. And he's like, I had my backpack, I was with my girl Krista, we were like going to get lunch, like I was going somewhere, I was not trying to like make paintings. And he was like, well, I got somebody for you gotta come with me, you know, like we're about to go. And I was like, what, okay. So he's like, trust me, you're gonna love this. We turn the corner, he like parades me down the street, and sure enough, we turn, and there's Charles. He's decked out wearing this fur coat. And I was like, the gods just, the heavens was like, oh, painting, you know? Like, it was like, oh my God, Mike. But that painting wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for Mike vouching for me and being like, my boy Charles is down the street and he'd be a perfect painting. Like, here we go. Like, this word of mouth and this community continues to build. And I will end on that note because now you guys are a part of this community that I continue to build, and I'm really grateful for the time and energy that you're spending with me as I kind of like do a song and dance up here. It really is important, and it means a lot to me because I'm having this, I am emotional a little bit right now because I'm about to open the show in Denver, and I'm having a lot of these moments where I'm recognizing that I never thought I would be here. And I never thought that this could be a possibility. My dream stopped somewhere else a long time ago. And the dreams keep going, and the pole keeps moving, and I keep following it. And I'm really grateful because the pole keeps moving, because people like you guys in this room make the opportunities possible. And if you didn't know it was possible, you wouldn't be in the museum. So thank you, thank you.